Because I spend so much time to get it to work. I mean, I got to, get it working. All right. So are there any questions about the stuff that we are currently talking about, the pre and post condition stuff? Yes?
Yes, I went to get your email, and I went to the link, and it had a YouTube video, and in the prior class, you had a folder that was on Moodle that actually had a text document of what you did on the screen. Are you going to have that for Tuesday?
Yeah, I can upload the documents to you. I just forgot to do it.
Okay.
Yep.
Would that be on the Noodle site, or would that be in the YouTube?
The documents will be on the Moodle site because YouTube cannot host my documents. YouTube can only be used to stream video clips. So the video will be on YouTube, but the actual documents will be on Moodle. If I forget to do it, upload it, you can just remind me to do it because it's all saved anyway on my compact flash card. Okay. Any other questions? No other questions. Okay. If there are no other questions, we'll go to the ungraded homework assignment because I don't want to grade it just yet, but I do want to make sure that everybody has a chance to see a typical question that I might ask in a test with this type of topic. So we'll go ahead and take a look at pre and post condition. Uh-oh, that's not it. That's not the assignment. Here, that's the assignment. Okay, so the assignment is giving you some code here. Okay, it's giving you a little bit of code. X gets x plus 1, a conditional statement that does not have an else, okay, which is something that we have seen already when we talk about conditional statements, but I really did not spend too much time to talk about what happens when there's no else in a conditional statement. And then I say, I give you the assumption, you are told, let me bump up the font size. You are told that the precondition of line 1 is k is greater than 0, x is greater than or equal to 0, and x is less than k. And the question is, what is post 4? Okay. So what we need to do first is to kind of go back in time and try to figure out what happens when you have a conditional statement that does not specify the else. Okay? How would you draw a picture of a conditional statement that does not have an else? Does that mean that we do not have any branches?
It still does something.
Okay.
Still finds.
Okay. Well, let's just look at the most, kind of like an abstract, level. If I have a condition statement that says if C, then, since I'm doing this, I might as well just do it in Moodle. Sometimes the more, obvious ways of doing things, escapes me. Because what I can do, like what I did with the other class, is I can just add a resource and use a web page to represent all the stuff that I normally capture in the text box, or in the text file. So this time it will be the same thing, use the date to represent, the time or the day of the meeting. And from here, I can just type it out. Okay, so the question is, if I have a statement that looks like this, if C, then I have the then block, and then I have and if. I don't specify any else. What is the behavior of this code? That is the question. Okay, what does this code do? Okay, what do you guys think? There's no else. Go ahead.
If the condition's true, it'll run through your if block. If not, it'll skip it.
Exactly. Very good. Okay, so there are two cases. And we just use a bullet point here. If C is in fact true, then the then block executes and we exit the statement. If C is not true, then the then block is skipped and we exit the statement. Is that okay? Does everybody understand what that means? If I have to draw a picture of that construct, the picture will still look like this initially because we are still branching. We are still making a decision and say which way should I go. There's still a question to ask. In this case, I abstracted to just a condition called C, but it can be a very simple comparison. It can be a really long Boolean expression. At this point, I don't care what it is. If we get onto this side, then we perform the entire then block. In other words, if the answer of this condition turns out to be true, then we go ahead and perform the then block. What if the answer of the condition C is false? Then we bypass this entire thing, but in the end, the two paths will still have to merge before we exit. Is that okay? In other words, this means it is equivalent to the following cumbersome representation. Because I can say if C, then block, else, an empty statement, and if. Can you guys relate this particular statement, which does not have an else inside, to this more general statement that has an else, except there's an empty statement between the else and the and if? Okay, they do exactly the same thing. Now, but when you look at this form here, someone may ask, but Jack, why do you even mention this form? Because this is more typing, it does not add anything to that particular representation, and the other one is easy enough to understand anyway. Well, when I write my programs, and I have conditional statements, especially when I check to see if the values of variables are same before I perform an operation, I always use if, then, else. Okay, sometimes I will leave the else portion completely empty, just like this. Okay, but later on, if I decide that I want to write some code to handle the error condition or the exception condition, I have a place to put all my exception handling code. I do not have to find out where am I supposed to put the else and what should be the indentation at that point. I have the entire skeleton ready to go, even though certain places of the skeleton is left empty at the time. Okay, so personally, I found that to be useful. Okay, when I write my programs, people would say, Tech, you have so many empty sections with the conditional statements. It's taking up lines. It's not being useful. Why do you do that? And as it turns out, many times, after a year or two, I will find out that okay, I need to handle the else case, this way, that way, or something else. But then I don't have to find out where to put the else and the indentation level because it's already there. Okay. Yep.
If it was a nested if-else statement, say if C then blank else, if B then blank else, you keep nesting it in the same way, so it'll be 2 over, and it else would be 2 over, so it would kind of go at a right downward angle.
Mm-hmm. Well, in this class, we don't really go by 2 spaces. I just use whatever indentation is in the HTML editor. Whatever the indentation level is, I just use that indentation level. Okay. Are there any questions at this point? No questions? Okay. So we'll go back to the practice question, which is already here, and then we'll try to figure this out. So I'll put this on one side and put the other one on the other side. Okay. So this is the solution of the practice question, which is not a graded assignment. You don't have to turn in anything, but if you have a chance to work on it, it's good. If you don't have a chance to work on it, this is how I would work out the solution. So let me just repeat the question itself. Line 1. Let's see, what should be the best way to do it? Okay, this is what I'll do. I will choose a font that is, that may not work. I'll just repeat the question here. X gets x plus 1. Line 2, if x is greater than or equal to k, then line 3, x gets x minus k. Line 4 is and if. Now, so in this case, how would I figure out the pre and post condition of this entire thing? The precondition of line 1 is given to me. So that part I do not have to worry about. It is just given to me as such. Okay. The next step is to figure out what is pre-2 or post-1. Okay. Well, post-1 is the same as pre-2. How do we figure out post-1? We look at line 1, and then we ask those questions. Remember those rules, the steps that we talked about in the previous class? So the first question we ask is, does the right-hand side refer to the left-hand side on line 1?
Yes.
The answer is yes. Okay, that's good. But the step 2 is asking, does that function, if I look at the right-hand side as a function of x, f of x, do we have a way to reverse it? Yes. Yep, we can reverse it. That's good. So which rule should we use? The substitution rule. So when you answer a question like this, you have to spell it out. You have to basically write your reasoning. It doesn't take a lot of space to write it out, because all I have to write is on line 1, the right-hand side refers to the left-hand side. Okay? The right-hand side as a function has an inverse. Okay? In other words, if f of x is the right-hand side, which is x plus 1, then the inverse function x prime of x is going to be x minus 1. Are we okay so far? Okay. This means we can use the substitution rule. Are we okay so far? Okay. So when we use the substitution rule, we are basically saying we apply the substitution operation on pre-1, because pre-1 is already given to me. I don't need to question why that is the case. We replace any mentioning of the variable that is on the left-hand side of line 1 with f prime, which is the inverse function, applied to x. Now this part here is just copied from the template. Okay, there's no reasoning at this point anymore, because we have already explained the reasoning of using the substitution and the inverse function in previous classes. At this point, we're just blindly identifying what we should do and then apply the operation. So what we need to do first is to spell out pre-1. Pre-1 is this mess here, so we just put it here. And we spell out what is f prime of x, which is x minus 1, like that. The next step would actually perform the substitution. X is greater than 0 is fine. It does not mention x. X is greater than or equal to 0 does mention x. So in that case, I have to substitute x with x minus 1 and say that whole thing is greater than or equal to 0. X is less than k also mentions x. So this time I also have to say x minus 1 is less than k. Are we okay so far? Okay. So that gives me post 1 or pre 2. If I tell you that x is an integer, can I simplify this a little bit? Okay. Assuming that x is an integer, there's one more empty seat back there.
You can sit next to me.